So let's pray. Lord, thank you for your mercy, your grace. Thank you for the fact that you really and truly have us in your focus all the time. That you haven't forgotten, that you do know what you're doing. Lord, I just pray that we would learn to recognize you in all things and recognize that your character is good and that your heart is good and that we learn to trust you. Lord, I pray that as a church, you would energize us and develop us with great wisdom, great knowledge, great desire to really and truly live as your people. I pray that we have a very positive effect on the society around us. Those that don't know you, Lord, I pray that we have the opportunity to share with them in a loving way the grace that you've offered us, the mercy that you've offered us as your people. I pray for their salvation. I pray for their families to be healed, their lives to change, for them to understand what it is to actually live. I pray today that you would speak. I pray that I did the diligence that you needed me to do to write this sermon up and to communicate. I pray, Lord, that you really would take it over and that you would implant truth so deeply that it starts to steer our reactions, that we start to think and function as real Christians, that we start to cancel out all the wrong thinking that the world produces. I pray that you take this small group of people and make them very strong spiritually. Again, thank you for your love. Amen. I mentioned last week, I'm kind of hot, aren't I? If I don't walk around a lot, I'll be okay, right? Hey, that was kind of arrogant, wasn't it? Yeah. All right. Now, you're just going to have, I have these glasses that make me, I didn't bring my other ones in, so I have to read way down here, so I'll do my best to read correctly. I said last week we're going to start going through what's called emotional intelligence. Now, this is biblical. This is not, even though it deals with a lot of secular writing and psychiatry and all that other stuff, they don't know it, but what they're actually talking about is very biblical. I want to take us through this, mainly because as I started doing my research, and I'm going to give you some stats, and I've got them written down so I can, but like the American Psychiatric Center, they pulled all the studies on the subject matter of stress and anxiety, and they have concluded that society right now is in an epidemic state with the issue of anxiety and stress. So the bulk of your society, and I had another stat, they had done some other studies and they logged over 1 million people who are in serious, what's called generalized, I got to look at it, generalized anxiety. So you have to understand that what is happening, and it's not just the United States, it's global. It's the reason why there is the opioid issue. It's the reason why killing is on the rise, people just shooting people randomly. It's the reason why people are committing suicide in large numbers, especially among the millennials. So all of that is going on. I know that even in our church family, there are people right now dealing with some very difficult, very stressful situations that is going to produce high levels of anxiety. There's a lot of stuff happening. There are also solutions to this. The solutions I'm going to give you today don't think that you can approach, and I want to say this well, too many of us approach life not realizing that it requires us to actually lock in and focus in and work very diligently at structures of thinking in our life. We tend to be very complacent, and we don't realize that to get through this world, you really and truly need to develop skills in your thought life. It is not about just random, I love you, let's get married. It's not about, oh, well, I'm just going to get up and go to work today and hope that everybody at work and I are going to get along, or I'm going to go to church and hope that somehow we get along. No. Life requires you to have great focus, great clarity. It requires you to really and truly work very hard at developing right thinking. It does. And I'm going to show you some of the problems that we have. Again, as I start teaching you this, you're probably going to sit there and say to yourself, he's preaching right at me. No, I am not. It's just we're all messed up.
Amen.
So the intention of this is to start giving the tools that are needed to become what's called emotionally intelligent. It is desperately needed in all of our lives. Some of us need it a lot more than others. There are some people that have great EQ, which is emotional intelligence. They've got a high EQ. Most of the time, you're taught about IQ, which is information, IQ, intelligence. They've done studies on that also, and they have found that high IQ people with low emotional intelligence don't produce as well as you would think they produce, even though they have high intelligence. They found that people with low IQ who had high emotional intelligence tend to be very successful people in their relationships, even health-wise. They're healthier. They found that those people are the ones that have the ability to navigate all aspects of life. Here's one of the things that happens. If you have low emotional intelligence, you usually don't know it. And what you do to compensate for it is you increase your IQ. It's fascinating study. So what you will do is you will master information to compensate for the fact that you know something's really not right. So you think more learning is going to offset what's not right. But what's not right is you have low emotional intelligence. Okay? It's like going to school, isn't it? So I will get to the solutions for you. But I'm going to walk you through some of the stuff so I can help you understand. Number one, and I'm going to deal a lot with the word anxiety today, but anxiety, just so you know, the studies they've done on it, it actually weakens you physically. It weakens you emotionally. It will cause you to disrupt the normal flow of your life. Anxiety and stress can drive you to a point that you don't even realize that you are destroying everybody around you and yourself. It's amazing. It actually can cause you to have physical ailments. So there is a biblical answer to how to deal with anxiety and stress. There is a biblical answer on how to mature emotionally. There really is. And you're going to know a lot of it. You're going to see it. I know most pastors don't preach it this way, but I'm going to preach it this way to you. Let me help you by telling you how your brain functions, just not total education on it. But every bit of information that comes into your head starts with your five senses. When you look at a person, almost instantaneously, you look into their face and you've had an emotional response to their face. You have emotional responses to smells, sounds, all of that. Physical, whether it's hot or cold. Your response is an emotional response. The first place in your brain your thoughts start is in the emotional sector, which is called the limbic. It's the center of your brain. All of your initial thoughts start right there. So from your external to an emotional response. From the emotional sector, you are to move into what's called the frontal lobe, which is logic and reasoning. The problem is most people don't move into the frontal lobe. They will think and make decisions from the emotional part of the brain, which causes them to have self-destructive behavior, which causes them to create crisis and not even understand why they're creating it. Because they're stuck almost in, and it's been said this way, in the primal part of the brain. Emotions serve a key purpose in your life. Emotions exist for the purpose of protecting you. So when you have your emotions controlling your life, you're actually operating with what would be called the primitive part of the brain. Flight, fight, love. And that's one chart I gave you. If you looked at the one with the circle that's kind of sloppy, it shows you the breakdown of what comes from the center of the hub are the main emotions you start with, and from those it spans out. You can see how it spans out. There are categories for each one. You got to find where the lines are. But your brain is designed to function this way. And the whole purpose of your emotions is for you to survive. Okay? They can kill you. When I was working for the short period of time with Great Circle, where they deal with children that have been seriously traumatized, one of the things they said to us there is these kids may out of the blue for no reason at all physically start attacking you. And you can't hurt them, you can restrain them. And they said what they're doing is what is called primal instinct. They are stuck in the part of their brain where their function is not reason and logic, it's totally survival. So they do these things out of a need. Another thing that happens with people that do not have proper brain function is they try to communicate, but they cannot communicate any other way except through an emotional response. That's why you'll see some children who are frustrated, angry, violent, aggressive. They're trying to tell you something, but they can't because they're stuck. And your job as a person is to help them be able to communicate whatever it is that's got them. It is that way with adults also. Part of emotional intelligence allows you to get control of your own emotions and understand them, and also understand and be able to navigate and actually steer the emotions of other people. You can see in just the little bit that I've said that if you have this understanding, your ability to communicate is drastically changed to a higher degree of intelligence, and you will now move into the arena as you develop emotional intelligence of less conflict in your life. You will now move into the arena of where there is more joy in your life. You will move into the arena where you will be able to worship God and really feel the sense of affection and relationship. Low emotional intelligence hinders you from that experience. Low emotional intelligence tends to make you very judgmental, makes you unkind, makes you angry, makes you excessively sad and depressed. It's, and then people spend truckloads of money to go to psychologists to have them fix it, when in truth you can actually fix it yourself, as long as you're not a serious, a chemical imbalance. So, you can't stop the fact that you're going to respond with feelings. You can't, it's going to happen. But you do have the ability to process your informations away from feelings to logic and reason. You have the ability to learn and train yourself not to be emotionally responsive when a situation requires you to think, that it requires you to take a logical action instead of a feeling action. For instance, when you're afraid, your brain will immediately go to that fear center of your brain, and you will either respond with fight, flight, but amazingly enough, you freeze for a short period of time. And the reason why you freeze is your brain is trying to determine whether you should run or hide or fight. That's why the military trains soldiers like that. You fight. You respond. They cancel out almost a large percentage of their emotional response system to where soldiers immediately will go towards, this is what I've been trained to do. So the feeling, boom, do. You can train yourself to live your life that way, and it's not like a soldier, but where you learn it so well, you have a normal knee-jerk reaction to a situation that's contrary to the reaction you've had that was wrong. I always use riding in cars as an example because it's an easy one. You either will convert from ready to fight all the time, everybody driving around you, and being angry at them all the time for the way they drive. You train yourself to think in terms of logic and reason instead of emotional response. That guy's a jerk. I can't believe he just cut me off. No. You train yourself to say, what's the reasonable and logical response to this? You go to the frontal lobe, reasoning, and move away from emotion. When somebody says something to you that you immediately feel it's hurtful or unkind, if you respond to it like, you're a jerk, you're going the wrong way. You have to understand and train yourself to understand what was the reason for that person saying that to me. And now how can I help that person in this dialogue that just occurred that was negative at the start? How can I steer it emotionally so it's in the right place? This is excellent to learn raising kids. And again, like I said at the start, none of this information is going to help you unless you commit to actually developing out. And it is a spiritual thing I'm going to show you. We're going to be going to Philippians. I got a lot of info, I told you. And you can always go back and listen to. Let me give you some of this now. People who have low IQ, and I went through a lot of that, you have to learn to manage your emotions. They have a hard time controlling their feelings. It's just the truth. They tend to display their feelings without thinking, low IQ. They usually don't consider what is appropriate in the environment or the situation that they're in. They just feel. And they react however they've developed themselves out to react when they have a feeling. Lack of emotional intelligence causes us to respond more intensely or even out of control because we don't understand that we lack the proper control. I've learned that a lot from talking to people when I was doing jail ministries. I'll give you a classic example. I had two guys who were getting both 7 years of prison time. And they came up to me and they go, we can't believe this. I can't believe they're putting us in for 7 years. All we did was break into a house. And I said, no, you didn't. I knew what they had done. I said, no, you didn't. You broke into 7 houses and he gave you a year for each house. They, in their minds, were convinced that that 7-year period was absolutely ridiculous. How dare you, they put 7 years on us for this? I cannot tell you how many times I'm in counseling conversation with people and they have no clue to what's wrong in their communication and that they're thinking predominantly from a wrong emotional place. They're not thinking in terms of logic and reason. They're thinking only in terms of how they feel, which causes them to lose the ability to properly fix what they really want to fix. I'll give you another case. I had a woman and a man that I was sitting with at one time, and they both were struggling with drugs, and she had had her children taken from her because of the drugs. And she sat there and said to me, all I want, she's crying, all I want is my children back. I love my children. I just want my children back. And I looked at her and I said, do you really love your children? She looked at me and you could just see it. And I said, no. If you really loved your children like you're telling me you love your children, then you would do whatever you had to do to stop this for that. So you can tell me all day how much you love your children, but the truth of the matter is you love the dope more than you love the children. She got mad. Now she's angry at me. Didn't listen to a word I said. Never saw her again. I run into that with people that call themselves Christians, and they are, a lot of them, Christians. But when you try to tell them the truth, they literally will argue with you as if you're not qualified to tell them the truth. It's funny to me. It's kind of comical to me. If you went in to see a doctor, and this doctor tells you you have cancer and that you need to have it removed, you're probably going to go and say, okay, let's do what needs to be done to get it removed. Because he's a doctor. And he showed you that you have cancer that needs to be removed. Fascinatingly enough, a pastor who's trained and educated himself in this stuff, when he tells somebody that they have something wrong in their life and they need to remove it, they go, well, who are you? My opinion's all that matters. They ignore it. And it's like, okay, if I can't help you if you won't let me help you. So emotional issues are a big problem. Now I'm going to give you three, and then like I said, we are going to get to Scripture. And this may take me a little bit longer, but this needs to be done. Number one, there's what's called relational stress. That's when our feelings control our relationships. I've said it before. Love is a choice. Anybody who is in love and has moved down the road, I've been 38 years. When you move down that road, I'm telling you that my wife has days where she has to make the decision to love me. Because there's days she wants to kill me. It is a choice. You choose your emotional responses. And that one flyer I gave you, did you read the other one where it talks about not letting other things control you? You need to really learn that. If I let everything my wife does wrong, or she lets everything I do wrong, or I let my emotions take off and run my home. Did you hear what I said? Yes. Letting my emotions run my home. I will destroy my home. You have to go to what God says is the right way to live in a relationship and do it. That's me yelling at me. Do it. It works. It's right. If you let your emotions determine your actions and you let your feelings determine your love for somebody, you will fail. Guaranteed. In your work environment, in your love lives, with your children, you will fail. They will deceive you. They will let you down. It is hard, believe me. I'd love to tell you I mastered it. I have not. Told you, I get beat up twice. You guys only get it once. The next thing I want to say to you about emotional stress or relational stress. Your life will become more stressful. And please hear this. This applies in a church setting. This applies in your work setting. This applies in your home. When people aren't acting like family, then the only other thing being produced is stress and anxiety. If the family, be it a church, be it where you work, if you are not, and this is one of the things my wife teaches at Holiday Inn where she works, the company, she teaches a lot of emotional intelligence to the staff. Her job is to train the employees to understand that they really are a family of people that are working to accomplish a goal as a team. That's why the president of the company, the guy who flies around in a Lear jet, if he comes to a resort and he sees trash on the ground, he will walk over and pick it up and put it in the trash can. He won't go find who didn't pick that up. That isn't what he does. They look at their company as we are all together in this. We all work together to accomplish the goal that this company has established. It is not any one person's job, and nobody, even though you have a different role, nobody is more important than anybody else. That's why when they do their Christmas parties, they want everybody to come, even the people who are just cleaning up trash. And they honor them as being a functioning, important part of that company. In your families, you have to recognize the value of each individual. And you have to honor them. And your words determine how you really feel about each member of your family, the way you talk to them, the way you treat them. And I guarantee you that if you are abusive verbally, disrespectful verbally, then what you are telling me is that you have a serious emotional intelligence problem. You are immature. Doesn't matter that you're right. You may be totally right about the subject matter. But like I've said here before, you can be right and the actions you're doing are wrong. You want your actions to be right. And that was my big mistake early on when I was raising my two oldest. I believed in beating everybody into submission. It doesn't work. Doesn't work. So, if you want your family to be healthy, act like a family. You want your church to be healthy? Same thing. You want your work environment to be better. You be the one who does all the work, and it's hard, of learning how to communicate on such a level that you are not offensive the way you are now. You now are demonstrating through action, not words, that you really want to develop unity and you want to develop a course of action that is conducive for both individuals. Talk is cheap. Actions matter. You learn to physically and emotionally respond to a situation the way you should respond to it. And you will change your environments, especially your enemies. I can give you an illustration of that. I was actually at Kanakuk for 1 year. I went in there. I needed something to do. I was bored. I wanted to see what the Kanakuk thing was about. I got a job working there with the maintenance guys. They did not like me the first day I walked on the premise. They hadn't even talked to me. They thought I was there to spy. So I knew it. They were, literally, I'd show up, they'd leave. So I waited till lunchtime the first day, and I waited for them all to go sit in the room. They go sit to eat, and I came in, stood at the door, because you had to go by me to get out. And I threw it all out on the table and said, look, I understand how everybody, I get it. And I made them communicate. We ended up all being friends. And then Kanakuk fired me. And it's a great story I need to tell you about. I didn't do anything wrong. It's higher up. But, okay, let me give you the next one, emotional stress. So you have relational stress, emotional stress. And I already told you what that is. You're letting your feelings control your focus. Can't do that. I'll give you an example basically. When a stressful moment turns into a stressful state of mind. So you now start operating and thinking and functioning totally from stress. You're just letting the emotions get out of control, and you're thinking in terms, and it's all stress responses. It's, oh no, I got to do, or I got to, oh no, it's panic almost. You let your stressful moment escalate into a stressful attitude that becomes an ongoing function of your life. I know people who do not feel like they're functioning unless they're in a stressful situation. They create the stress. because they don't know how else to do anything. It has to be stressful. Oh no, I forgot something. Oh, what am I going to do? No, you just forgot something. You don't react with stress, you react with solution. What's the logical? I drove off without my keys. Actually, yesterday, I drove away from the house twice because I kept forgetting my glasses. I went back to get them, saw something else, forgot, got back in my car, realized I forgot my glasses, had to go back and get them again. I got them on the second try. But you can let stress control your life. So now let me give you one more, circumstantial stress. Go ahead and put up there, though, for me, Philippians 4:1, please. Circumstantial stress is where our feelings control our future. Decisions are now made without logic, just feeling. Your circumstances should not control your stress level. You should control it. There are always going to be issues in your life where things aren't going to be right. You're always going to have to deal with issues where things went wrong. People said and did things wrong. Money's an issue. Health is an issue. There's always going to be issues that come up. When you start to develop an emotional intelligence, you will start dealing correctly with the situation. And you will deal with it as Christians from a biblical thought life. I'm starting to talk funny now. A biblical thought life. I'll give you an example of that. I think I've given it before. My wife has skin cancer, and I told her one evening that I pray for her all the time that God would take it away. And she said to me, why? I like my wife. And I said, well, what do you mean, why? She goes, well, Dan, you don't think that my father wouldn't do that on his own accord if he felt that's what needed to be done? Now, she's not telling me not to pray. What she was saying to me is the way you just said this to me, it was in a way that was, I got to pray for you to make, so got to make it go away. And my wife's response is, no, logic and reason should tell you, Dan, that the character of God is such that I really don't have to be that concerned. I heard her say this. I remember when we lost Tyler, and she said the same thing about Tyler when she was holding Tyler. And she said she knew in that moment when she held Tyler, our Tyler, that if God wanted to bring him back, he could. She knew the character of God in those situations. So now that should set off a little light in your head. So there are people who live through life who go through terrible situations and navigate it because they really understand and believe who God actually is. That's a key. That's a little hint. Because usually anxiety is caused from distrust in God's character and what he said he will do. Just be honest with yourself. Anxiety is usually caused because things didn't go the way you wanted them to go, and you are demanding that things go the way you want them to go. And when they don't, then you become stressed out and anxious and angry because it didn't go the way you wanted it to go, when in truth it went the way it was supposed to go, if you believe God. Now that's hard when things are broken, isn't it? It's hard when you get hurt. It's hard. But either God is telling me the truth about himself or he's a liar. And I have to make a decision, and this involves, again, I'm not left emotional intelligence. It is coming to a right understanding of the relationship you're in. Think about what I just told you. You have to learn to navigate relationships with people. You also need to learn that you need to learn how to have a right relationship with God. With right emotions, right understanding, right response. I know that's a lot of info. Philippians, please. 4:1. Therefore, my brothers whom I love and long for, my job, my joy, and crown, I told you I have these, and crowns, stand firm. Well, look at the stand firm first. And I'm not going to, I could give you the history. We're not going into the history of this. You had two women that were fighting in this church, and Paul's telling everybody how much he loves them. By the way, you want to see how hard it is to say names in the Bible. That one right there doesn't sound anything like it looks. Look it up. But move to the next one real quick for me. Go to, if you can, yeah. Yes, I ask you all, true companions, help these women who have labored side by side with me in the gospel, together with Clement and the rest of my fellow workers whose names are in the book of life. Let me give you a quick rundown now. And you can go back and look at this for yourself. The stand firm statement you saw is really the word commit. Commit. I mean, you stand firm, that action in itself is a commitment stance. You commit. You make a conscious decision to stand firm in your faith. You basically say to yourself, I'm going to believe God. I'm not letting this go. That's why I told you my favorite song after we lost Tyler was a song by Jars of Clay where they said, this is the one thing that I know. It's a great song. You know, this is the one thing that I know. It gave me a lot of strength. It gave me the ability to stand firm because I knew. Any of you, if you haven't had the opportunity to listen to E.V. Hill, sermon he did where he preached at his wife's funeral, he stands there, and I've told you this before, and he yells at the top of his lungs, which is a statement of firmness and conviction. The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away. And he yells it. And in that sermon he does, he's telling how grateful he is that God gave him that woman. But he stood firm in his faith, preaching his own wife's funeral. Let me give you some others because I'm going to run out of time. Let's just keep going here. Keep rolling down. We'll keep going. We'll go all the way down to 13. Told you I was going to give you solutions. Rejoice in the Lord always. That doesn't mean your circumstances. That's what Susan was communicating to me when I said I was praying for her. She doesn't have a problem with God. The circumstance is no good, but she rejoices in the Lord. She's confident in who he is. You have to get there for your emotional intelligence to start developing in a good way. And what's that word rejoice mean? If you're rejoicing, is there peace? If you don't look at it now, but if you look at your chart under the feelings of being happy, you'll see that there is a correlation. When you have an understanding of who it is that you're in a relationship with, and you understand that that relationship is a good relationship, you're going to rejoice, you're going to worship, you're going to honor, you're going to feel a sense of peace. Anxiety becomes less and less. I remember when I first started dating Susan, I was always worried about the other guys wanting to date her. That's anxiety. That's fear. And I remember after we got married, we still had that childish mentality where we didn't just quite trust each other yet because we didn't really know each other yet. So you still wondered, and she'd have to check up on me and make sure I was behaving. And then as time went on and the relationship developed and developed and developed and developed, there are thoughts I don't even have. I don't have trust issues with my wife. Does that eliminate stress and anxiety? Why isn't it the same with God? If I trust God, right, then the anxiety should be eliminated. I trust my wife's character. So I don't have anxiety and stress in relation to I don't worry about my wife considering cheating on me or anything. because it's eradicated. There is this proper emotional, proper relational response that has established a sense of great comfort. My problem now is, and I've actually done this, I will drive too fast to get home because I know she's home and I want to go hang out. I really do. Why? Because the relationship I have in this case is very comfortable. Now, let me say this to you. When it comes to God, it's the same thing. I love writing sermons. I love sitting and reading what God says. I love talking to God. I can't wait. I left here to do that vacation my wife made me do, and I actually was missing this. I'm not kidding. And it has to do with the same thing I was telling you that has developed over the years in the relationship I have with my wife. There becomes this deep desire to be with my Lord. And because I rejoice, anxiety is diminished, stress is diminished. Let your reasonableness be known to everyone. The Lord is at hand. Now, there's two ways that the Lord is at hand. I've seen the two ways it's looked at. One is that the second coming is near. I like the other view. I like the view that, no, the Lord is near. He's right here with you. You should rejoice. You should be reasonable and some of your translations use a different term for reasonable. But the point is that if you're a Christian, you have to know that he's there. That he's really a part of your life. That it is not him there doing this. I'm waiting for you to mess up. I really am. I'm waiting for it. That isn't what he's doing. It's the exact opposite. The exact opposite. My view of God isn't the fact that, I know that he is the judge. I know that he's going to judge the sins of people that have not accepted Christ. Those that have accepted Christ, your sins are gone. They were nailed to the cross. Your scripture tells you that. So you're not dealing with the judgment of God. You will not see the wrath of God as a believer. You have no idea. You will not see it. Because that wrath was poured out on the cross, and Christ suffered the wrath of God on your behalf. So there's no reason for you to think in any way, shape, or form that God is ever against you because he saved you. And you have to lock that into your head. And people who refuse to accept the security of that relationship are going to be afraid of God. They're going to be afraid that he's not going to take care of them. They're going to be afraid and anxious and stressed because they don't really know the character of their God. And believe it or not, when you start learning the character of God and who he is, your obedience level increases, not because you're keeping the law, but because you're falling in love. That applies in your work environment. That applies in your church. That applies in your home. Literally. If you knew me 20 years ago, I am not the guy that I was. I'm not. Years have been spent by God training me to love you people. Because a lot of times you're not loving. But it's true. It's not that I'm a great guy. It's not, oh, Dan's nice. No. Dan let God do the work in his life that needed to be done to change him. I easily could be a bad guy again, except for one thing. I got such a great relationship with him. I hope you're getting this. Yes. And I hope you need to really apply it. I'm tired of heartache. I really am. I'm tired of watching people be hurt. I would like to see people learn who their God is. I really would. I want more of it. I mean, I really do. I wish I could just push a button and all of a sudden have it all figured out and be able to live it out. No, like I said at the start, you have to desire it and you have to work for it. Because you have to unwind all the garbage that's in your head. You have to let the Word of God unwrap and unravel and take out all the things that you think about him and everyone else that are wrong. You let him do it. You agree with him. You fight with him about it if you need to. God, I don't know why you're telling me I should do this. I hate it. I don't want to do it, but I'll do it anyway. I've done that. What else did I give you scripture-wise? Let's just pull some of that up because I'm going to run out of time if I already haven't. Oh, I'm real close to running out of time. Here's one of your solutions. Cast all your anxieties on him. Why? Do you believe that? Really? How are you doing with anxiety? If you believe that, then how are you doing? You cast all your anxieties on him. Why? Because he cares for you. You know what this means? And it's back there in Philippians, and you need to go look at it. But you pray, and you tell him everything, and you annoy him with it. That's what the conversation Brenda and I had yesterday. When I pray about something that's really causing me stress, I don't shut up about it. I talk to him about it every single day. And my hope is God's going to go, all right, fine. Just because it tells you to do that. It tells you back in Philippians, I may have to take this back. The word supplication that's in the text, when it talks about praying, supplication means to beg. That's what it means. Paul tells you to beg. You take all that anxiety, you throw it in front of God, and you say, look, it's like my dad, and I won't use the exact statement. It was early on in when he became a Christian, but he was trying to quit smoking. And he couldn't quit. He went from cigarettes to cigars to pipes. And he said, I remember the day I was driving down the road, and I was really mad about it, and I was mad at God about it. And he said, I held the pipe out the window, and he said, you smoke the blank thing. And my dad said he quit. It was almost like God's, all right, I'll take it from you now. You're willing to let me do it. Now, that was early on in a man's Christian walk. But there's a point where you say to God, I'm not telling you to cuss. But early on in your walk, my dad figured it out, and you should figure it out. There's a point where if something's tearing your life apart, you go to God and say, it's your problem. Fix it. It's your problem. Let him do it. He'll do it. He did it to me. I remember the day I said to my dad, I can't fix this. God's got to fix this. And he blew everything out of the water. Everything. I'll tell you that story sometime. Literally blew it out of the water. And I have this back in my mind thought where it's like, well, you asked me to. Sometimes he has to break everything for you to be fixed. Yeah. What else I got? Give me, Do not be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and supplication. Begging, supplication. With thanksgiving. That means you have a right view of his character. Let your requests be made known to God. This isn't about getting things. This is about an attitude. This is about a thought process. This is how you get out of being emotionally immature. Problem is we have a hard time believing that God really and truly can change us. If I had my whole family in here, brothers, sister-in-laws, my own kids, and I would say to them, is it possible for God to change somebody? They would all be giving you these big head shakes. Yes, he changed. I did. Some of you know my story as a kid. I was not a nice person. What else do I have? And then I'm going to wrap up. Therefore, I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will... this is Jesus, right? Isn't life more than food and the body more than clothing? Go to the next. Please. Look at the birds of the air. You've seen it. The problem is we've seen it so much we don't let it penetrate. We just know, I've read this. But we don't let it actually speak to our heart to where we sit there and go, wait a minute. This must be true. He said it. Here's what most of us do. Well, I've actually been hungry. Well, I've actually had to go without clothes. I've had people do that. Well, he hasn't done this for me. You know what I almost always find out in those cases? I'm not kidding you. Especially in this United States. Well, where are you spending your money? I saw that nice TV you have. I see that you eat at McDonald's and Hardee's and Wendy's and all over. I see you smoke. And you're telling me God's not financially providing for you? Yes, he is. You're just wasting it. I see it all the time. I mean, there's a great book you need to read. It's called Rich Dad, Poor Dad. It's a secular book, but he makes a great point. Are you not more valuable than they are? I mean, you guys know these verses. Your answer lies in your ability to recognize the character of God. But there's one other aspect I want to give you, and this is where I'm going to have fun. Grateful people usually are emotionally intelligent. People who are ungrateful have low EQ. Selfish people have low intelligence when it comes to emotions. Self-seeking people, people that are looking only to fulfill their wants, low emotional intelligence. People that are grateful. I told you about Ted Burton. I've told this story before. Ted Burton, who was over at Woodland Hills, he and I were having a meal together years ago when I was hanging out with those guys when the church was forming. And he asked me a great question. He was down in South America. He was living in a hut or huts with these people that were dirt floors, you know, what we would consider be an awful, awful situation. They invited Ted to come eat with them. They didn't have enough food to even feed themselves, but they fed him too. He had to eat with them, otherwise they would have been upset. He asked me this question. Are they blessed people, Dan? And I'm like, dirt floors, eating bugs, you know, just in a straw little hut. And he goes, Dan, they were full of joy. These people, they weren't even bothered by the fact that they didn't have enough food. They were full of joy. And they were totally pleased to have me come and sit and eat with them in their little hut on the dirt floor. We complain over the most insignificant things in our lives because we're ungrateful. If you have anything at all in your life, let alone if you have somebody who loves you, you have a lot. Amen. You have way more than you need. But selfish, ungrateful people usually are very anxious and very stressed and unhappy because they don't have what they want. And they fail to recognize what they already have. They're ungrateful. Now, here's my illustration. Now, I would like to take credit for this, but this really was God. This is cool. So I'm sitting there. I was at a party the other night, and we did the white elephant thing. And I brought prunes as the gift. Come on, that is funny. It is funny. Okay, so I watched what happened at the party, and somebody got this big chocolate candy bar, and somebody got a game, and there was a big tub of popcorn, different flavors, I think, and there were all these great gifts, and then somebody got my prunes. And I love the line that came from it. The line was, "Isn't there anything else in this bag?" It's a perfect illustration. So they didn't want my prunes. But see, when you think about life, sometimes you get a bunch of prunes, right? And if you just deal with it, your prunes, you might find that at the bottom of the thing is a $20 bill wrapped up in cellophane. But because you didn't want the prunes and weren't willing to deal with it, you lost $20.
It's a $16 limit, though.
So if God's given you prunes, just eat your prunes for a while. You might get to the end of it and there might be a $20. Now God, isn't that cool? I want you to know that was God. What a great illustration. All right. Yeah, I heard that. All right, so I think I'm going to end on that note. A lot of hard information, I get it. Look at this. I'm actually shaking. That's how intense this stuff is to me. Because it is. I want people to experience the joy of their salvation. The only way you're going to do it is if you start doing the hard work. Start dealing with your emotional issues and deal with them the way God tells you to deal with them. And you can go study this stuff. It's online. We're going to try and start a course on it because emotional intelligence is something you continually work on. It's the hardest thing I've ever had to look at because I realize how immature I am emotionally when I started looking at it. All right, well, let's pray us out. Lord, thank you so much, again, for that investment you make in us. I pray, like I said earlier, I pray that we get this. I pray that we, as a body of believers, start really loving each other as we should love each other, that as families, we start learning to love correctly the way you would have us love. Lord, I pray for the healing of hearts, the changing of minds, the healing of the hurt that's occurred over the span of a person's lifetime. I pray that you give us great clarity of mind and wisdom to be those people that can help each other as a family of believers, as Paul is talking in reference to Philippians 4. Teach us to pray. Teach us to throw everything at your feet and then wait expectingly and accepting whatever we're given. I've said enough, Lord. Thank you.